Coach DeMarco here with another episode of Get Better Basketball Live. And today my guest is Jefferson Mason, who is the Senior Brand Manager at Dr. Dish Basketball and also the Head Skills Trainer. Jefferson, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, no better time than now to talk hoops. So anytime I can jump on and chat with another great basketball mind, I got to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. And I'm excited. We're going to get into some player development stuff in a couple minutes. But I'm interested to learn a little bit more about you as a player and then also, you know, what you're doing now with Dr. Dish. I had a chance to see that you're a former Division II All-American. You led your team to a Final Four. So some pretty cool stuff in your playing career.
Yeah, definitely. So, grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota here. Actually spent about 2.5 years playing Division I basketball out in Northern Colorado for Tad Boyle. Tremendous experience out there playing for him in the Big Sky and learning basketball. Decided to transfer closer to home, like you mentioned, and played at Minnesota State Mankato, which is a really good Division II school in the NSIC. Very fortunate to have some really good teammates, obviously some great coaches in Coach Markenthaler and Schott over that way, but had a tremendous 2 years there playing. Like you mentioned, my senior year was able to make it all the way to the Final Four, so probably to this day still the best season in our school's history. And, you know, obviously with winning comes some individual awards. So I was named, All-American by a couple different teams and, All-District and MVP and Most Outstanding Player and all that good stuff, which is gave me the opportunity to continue my basketball career after I finished in college. So following that, I spent about 4 or 5 years playing professionally overseas. A rookie year in Germany, then I bounced all over the place, played in Romania, played in the Middle East, Turkey, Luxembourg, just all over the place, got to travel quite a bit and play the game I love, and then transitioned back into being back home in skills training. That kind of led me with a really cool story of a person I was connected to, Nick Bartlett, who you know very well. He connected me with Dr. Dish, and that's where we're at right now, moving forward.
What is your role, Jefferson, now as you work with Dr. Dish? I know you work as a head skills trainer, but can you tell us a little bit more about your work specifically with Dr. Dish?
Yeah, definitely. I can tell you that extremely blessed to be in the position I'm in. Our CEO, Doug Campbell, he really gives every employee at our company in Airborne Athletics the opportunity to learn and develop. And so for me, I kind of touch on a lot of different areas. I work with our product team on ensuring that, we're being innovative and adding things that coaches, players, and trainers want to utilize. I also obviously work on the skills training aspect, so creating a lot of drills, working with, our professional NBA trainers and also trainers of all different levels. And then I also focus really heavily on the marketing side, in particular, our brand in general. I think the last 4 years, we've done a fantastic job of just building the name of Dr. Dish Basketball, getting it out there to every house, every college, every high school, and then now globally. And so my focus is to make sure that everybody in the basketball world knows who Dr. Dish Basketball is and that they're getting some type of resource from us, whether that's our equipment or a really cool blog post or, some skills and drills on the court.
Well, I'm excited to talk about some of those skills and drills. I've had a chance to read up on your blog posts. I see the great videos that are out there as well. And as we shift gears now to talk a little bit more about player development, there's a lot out there in terms of player development specialists, NBA skills trainers, all the different titles you want to use. But, I want to pick your brain a little bit for the coaches that are watching. And what do you believe it takes to, be a successful skills trainer? And what are the keys to working with players and helping them to improve their game?
Well, as a skills trainer, first off, you have to be confident. You have to be knowledgeable, but you also cannot have an ego with your training. One thing that I found is that every player is different. You can't kind of put them in a box or a shell or follow the same format for every single player that you work with. Some kids, boys and girls, they come in, some are athletic, some are not quite there. Some are tall, some are short, some are fast, some are slow. Some can shoot, some cannot. And so if you only follow the same format and you have that egotistic mindset of like, hey, I'm only going to do this. The player better fit into this. They're only going to be a better player if they do what I say. It's not going to work out for you. And so as I've evolved as a skills trainer, I've realized that I need to adjust my drills. I need to adjust my goals. I need to adjust how I speak to certain players. Some I can be a little bit more aggressive. Some I need to dial it back a little bit, and then remain positive through the process. So being able to navigate and adjust depending on who the player is, where they're at in their particular skill set and career is super important, especially if skills trainers want to work outside of maybe just a specific age range or skill level.
Well, as someone who's in education and in the teaching profession, I can say that you do a really nice job as a teacher, just how you're kind of differentiating for different players and the different skills that they have. So that's really cool to hear that perspective. And, you know, it made me think about, as you were talking, you know, the different types of players. How do you assess what players need? You know, you mentioned you have taller and smaller and faster and just different skill sets. So how do you assess the player's skill set as you're trying to help them to develop to be the best that they can be?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I honestly do a little bit of homework myself and ask initial questions before I even start with the player. First off, I always ask the player, you know, what type of player do they want to be? Who do they want to be on the basketball court? I think people would be surprised that a lot of players don't want to be, you know, the superstar player or the person that scores all the points or has the basketball. They really want to specialize in a specific skill or play a role. And then on top of that, you know, diving deeper into the different type of style that their coach, whether they're, you know, in high school or college, what system do they play in? One thing that I really stand by is developing overall skill so that a player can fit in any system and work with any coach. But I also like to break down what their current coach is doing so they can find some immediate success. And the only way I can do that is to watch film, to ask questions, sometimes even reach out to their coach, talk to their parents, and then again, talk with the player on what their goals are or who they want to be. Now, as far as getting to the actual skills on the basketball court, you know, what I like to do is evaluate my players, and I'll give them a grade on really all the basic skills: ball handling, shooting, footwork, conditioning, you know, awareness, ability to absorb knowledge. All these things are super important. And after that initial evaluation, I'll tell a player where I think they are in their particular skill set. Now, again, players are going to come in and highlight the areas that they want to get better in. Some players are like, hey, I want to work on my shot, and that's the thing that I want to really, really focus on. You have other players that will come in and say, Coach, I'm an open canvas. You do what you want with me. Make me the best player I can be. And that's really fun because then you can really diagnose, you know, different situations and really build out that long-term plan for a player. So, again, being flexible and understanding who you're working with and the ultimate goal is super important.
Sounds like you really do your homework on your players too. You make them part of the process, but you also do some research on them too. And I think that's really cool that, you know, you're checking in and seeing what they do with their team, watching some film and learning about them as well. Just thinking about training, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, as I mentioned. There's a lot of stuff on social media, some good, some bad. So just thinking about some of the common misconceptions that kind of go with training or skills training. What are some of those common misconceptions that you see that are out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a lot of trainers that will, you know, ask me questions like, you know, do I need to do something different every single time my player steps on the court? Will they get bored with what I'm doing? And, you know, the answer to that question is this. You don't have to do something new every single time you step on the court. You can always reformat a similar drill, set different expectations or goals to that drill. You can do it in a multitude of different ways without necessarily inserting something brand new. Now, with that being said, I am really for making sure that the training sessions and practices in general are unique and fun. But at the same token, you can't throw too much at a player every single session, especially if it's different, because they never have an opportunity to absorb that knowledge, go work on it, come back, get the feedback they need, and then continue to build from there. And so what I like to do is I like to start at the basics of each one of my skills drills that I do, whether that's shooting or ball handling, and then we continue to progress on those drills. Now, when players come back in, I'll touch base on where they were the following week. And if they haven't made a ton of progression, it doesn't make a ton of sense for me to move on into something that's more difficult or more challenging for the player. What I'll do by doing that is allow them to build negative or bad habits that will ultimately hurt the player. Now, maybe at that moment in time, they're like, this is super cool. I'm learning this and this and this. But if you truly care about your players, you're going to put them on a path that's going to help them be successful. Now, holding yourself accountable as a trainer and making sure that you're teaching them and giving them the ability to reach those goals is important as well. And so as we continue to progress through that stuff, you can add new variations, add new goals, and make it more challenging so it feels like things are different. But you don't necessarily have to change every single individual workout that you do, in my opinion. The other thing I would say is, again, I touched on it earlier, is that every player that comes in, they follow the same path. I mean, if I could talk to you about 5 or 6 different players that I'm working with right now, ages, 4th grade all the way up until, the highest level, their path of success, it looks completely different. So my high level guys, I can't do the drills that I do with them with my young players, even though it may feel cool and sound cool and all that good stuff. I'm truly about making the player better. So understanding, again, the talent level of your players, and understanding that you don't have to do a ton of new things every single time you get out there to actually help the player get better, and then also keep them interested in training with you as a skills trainer.
What are some of the ways you mentioned, just kind of to follow up, keeping it fun or making it fun for them in the process? You don't always have to have new drills every single time they come in the gym. You're constantly assessing them. But what are some of the things that you might do to make it competitive or to make it a little bit fun for the players in some of those training sessions? Maybe when you're, keeping up some of those drills that you did in the last session, but then making it fun or competitive.
Yeah, definitely. I think just the natural organic transition into doing something a little bit more difficult and challenging is one thing that sparks the interest of players, because it keeps their attention. Then also, if it is difficult for them to do, they want to keep doing it over and over and over. On top of that, setting goals. Okay, a lot of trainers get out there and they have players do shooting drills or ball handling drills, and there's no goals around what they do. And so whether it's a shooting drill or even a ball handling drill, our goal is to be perfect this many times, or to make this many shots, or be able to get this many reps in this amount of time. And as we continue to get better and we master our skill, we should get better at reaching those goals either faster or more efficiently. Now, when a player sees that they're hitting goals and you're extending those goals and then they reach those goals, in their mind, they can truly see, I'm getting better. It's a true statement where if a player is training and practicing, sometimes they don't know how much better they're getting. And when you set attainable goals or things that players can look forward to or at least process, that's going to give them the confidence to continue to keep working, not only with you in that training session, but outside of that training session when they go home. That's where the real progress is made. They come back and then you rinse and repeat that same process until they get to where you want them to go.
Well, Jefferson, we both know that shooting is, can never be undervalued. It's a skill that we hear a lot about. It's talked about a ton, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about shooting. But before we do, what are some of the other skills for players, and thinking about this from a player perspective or for those skills trainers out there, that players really need to master to play in college and even beyond? You're someone who played at a very high level in college, played at the professional level, now you're training players. So what are those other essential skills that players need?
Well, obviously, every skill is important, like you mentioned. I think one of the biggest things that maybe people don't really consider this a skill, but it is the ability to absorb knowledge and then apply it. One of the things that separates high-level players from players that don't make it to the higher levels is their mind. And I know it sounds weird. I know a lot of players are like, I don't really understand that, but it's true. Helping a player understand how to take in knowledge and then apply it on the court, or take in direction and apply it on the court, is super important. Now, for all the coaches out there listening right now, how many times did you drop a play or tell a player to do something and they completely did the opposite over and over and over and over again? Now, think about how frustrating that is. When you get to the higher levels, that can't happen. You can't make those type of mistakes. And so a lot of times you get really skilled, really athletic, really good basketball players that you see at, the fitness gym, and you're like, well, how didn't you play college ball, or how didn't you play professional basketball? And a lot of it has to do with their mind, the ability to make sure that they can apply those skills in the right setting. The other thing too, I think even outside of ball handling, shooting, and all that good stuff is adversity, right? So I think players that face adversity at a younger age are the ones that benefit the most in the long term. So for me, I wasn't really highly recruited at a young age as a high school basketball player, and I had to really, really, really work. I had a lot of people that, may have not thought I was a good basketball player, but I faced a lot of adversity when I was young. That gave me the ability when I got into college or I got into really stressful situations not to give up, to continue to be able to push and then do my job and support my teammates and my coaches. A lot of players don't get that or don't understand that concept. They don't get it from their trainers. They may not get it from their parents. And it's hard for coaches in that moment to help them overcome that. So those are two skills that all of my, both my college coaches, my assistant coaches, and even my professional coaches, and even our mental coaches would always talk about being able to master that so that you can remain even keel, positive, no matter what's happening in your training, during practices, or come game time.
Those are both great skills, and I was smiling thinking about players absorbing information and then being able to execute. And having had some experiences as a coach myself, where you draw that play up and some players are able to do it and others, maybe not on the fly sometimes. So that's a really good one. Just thinking about, training sessions and working with players, and something, I was curious until I kind of got into some training myself and started talking with other trainers and kind of learning what worked for me and the players I work with, is what's the breakdown? What does that look like for you as someone who is a successful skills trainer, has a really good record as a skills trainer? What does that look like for you? What's the breakdown of your sessions in terms of like shooting and passing or other things that you're working on? How's that work out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in every training session that I do, I come in with a plan, right? But my plans are free flowing like a conversation. You never know where it's going to take you. And so I never look at the clock and say, we've done this for 15 minutes. We got to be done. If we're jamming and we're rolling and we're learning and we're having fun, we might extend that a little bit more and say, you know what, we were going to do this today, but we'll focus on it next time. Again, I think every player is a little bit different. And depending on what they want to work on, you're going to focus on a lot of those different things. So I've had players come in where we went through a general workout where we're working on essentially almost every skill. We get in, we do, 15 minutes or so of some ball handling. We get into our individual moves, attacking downhill. Then we get into those same individual moves with shooting. And then we get into maybe our footwork, spot shots or rhythm shots and all that good stuff. And that's a typical basic workout where you're touching on a multitude of skills. But again, if a player comes into me and says, hey, coach, I really struggled shooting the basketball. I want to break down my form. I want to work on different motion movements and footworks into my shot. I'm going to focus on that because that's what that player needs in that moment in time. Now, we'll touch on different things because basketball is all related in every skill. A lot of the times your footwork is what affects your shot. Sometimes your ability to handle the basketball and get that ball in the pocket will affect your shot. There's a lot of different things that affect one or the other. And so naturally and organically, even if you focus and highlight some skills, you're going to work on other things as well. And so, again, I go in with a plan, but I'm not afraid or worried to break that mold or plan if I need to and if it's going to benefit the player.
I appreciate you mentioned shooting and the importance of footwork. We're going to come back to that one in a couple minutes. But first, as we're talking about general skills, I just wanted to ask you, what is a skill, a technical skill that you feel like is really undervalued in basketball, and something that if players work on can certainly help them to improve as a player?
Yeah, definitely. I think majority of basketball players, when they step into the gym, the two things that they want to work on the most is probably ball handling, and then shooting will come, or vice versa. I do believe that one of the skills that a lot of players really rarely ever focus on, unless if they're a specialist, is defense, defensive positioning, and everything that comes with defense. So I wouldn't necessarily just categorize it as defense on the ball, but I mean defense within as an individual player, and then also as a team, rebounding and everything that comes with it. And so one thing for me as a player that I realized when I was young was that I wanted to score points. And I really wasn't a very skilled basketball player when I was young, but I realized that if I played defense, got a couple steals here or there, I could get some fast break layups, which were pretty easy. If I got some offensive rebounds or some defensive rebounds and I pushed the basketball, it was a great opportunity for me to score points. And so I knew if I could get some easy buckets that way, play really good defense, hold it down on that end of the court, and my offensive game progressed, I would be a really good basketball player. And I think that defensive skill gets overlooked a ton because it's not a desirable job. You got to want to be in the trenches and working hard and up for the challenge for that. But it's one of the more rewarding things, and it's something that coaches absolutely love. Everything encompassing the defense end of the court. But I think, outside of that, one really, really important skill for players, again, is going to be, is going to be shooting the basketball. If you can shoot the ball, you can make a team. I can guarantee you that. It doesn't matter your skill, your overall skill level. You can really shoot the basketball, whether you're fast or slow. You're going to have an opportunity to find yourself on a basketball team and have some success.
Well, that's a great segue into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is shooting. And something obviously I've seen you blog about it. I've seen videos that you've put out on social media. And obviously working for Dr. Dish, there's a lot of shooting going on. But the blog post actually I read recently again, and I actually read it back in the spring, was the 7 keys to improving shooting. And I just thought it was such a great post, the points that you touch upon. I'm actually going to post that down in the description below so coaches can check out that blog post. But could you take us through some of those ideas and maybe some other ideas too that are the keys to being a great shooter?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to kind of hit all of those ones, which I think are super important. And again, these are 7. There's, another 15, 20, 30 that you could add to that. But some of these are my favorites. So a consistent routine, right? That's super important to understand when I'm getting in the gym, what I'm doing, right? You want to be consistent with your shot as well. So, a lot of kids will get into the gym and they'll just start throwing up shots from here or there. They'll get in, they're shooting, Steph Curry NBA threes. They're shooting shots all over the place and not really focusing on what they're doing. Now, that's fun to a certain degree. And, are you getting better? Maybe slightly. But having a consistent routine and training regimen when you get in the gym and saying, I'm going to get better at shooting, working on your curl shots, your flare shots, your pin downs, your transition shots, your catch and shoot rhythm, stepping, all that good stuff. Building a consistency with your shooting is going to help you build that consistency in your brain and muscle memory when you get to the court. The second thing I'll mention is form shooting. It's super, super important. I mean, unbelievably important. It gives you the opportunity to auto and self-correct. When I work on my form shooting up close to the basket, I can really see that basketball move. I can also see what my hand, my elbow, my shoulders, my feet, everything is doing. I can correct and fine tweak very, very, very small mistakes that are affecting my shot in a negative way. It also builds up great muscle memory too. Now, I had a player when I played professionally. He was 37 years old, not super athletic, and this guy, I saw him warming up. I was dunking and doing a million other different things trying to get the crowd going, and I saw him just doing his form shooting. And I was like, well, what is this guy doing? Well, he lit us up that game, I can tell you that. And there was a reason why he was 37 years old and still playing professional basketball, because he was doing things the right way. Another good one is just focusing on the fundamentals and balance. A lot of kids want to get in and shoot fadeaways and do all this crazy stuff right off the bat that they see in college or NBA, not understanding that those guys have gotten a million reps with basic form, basic footwork, basic shooting, right? They've mastered that. They didn't get bored at doing those things. And because they became so great at that, they were able to then transition into some tougher shots, you know, even more game-like shots that they encounter because of their skill. And so making sure that you're focusing on the fundamentals, even if you start to kind of feel like, man, I've been doing this and shooting 200 shots, building that consistency, it's like writing your name every single day. It's super important. And that's kind of my next point right there, developing consistency. The only way that you can do that is by doing things the same way. When you develop that consistency, your confidence goes up. It skyrockets because you know when you get to the court, you're comfortable in what you're doing. You know, I have some players that when they get into the game and we're watching film, they shoot the basketball different every single time and then question and say, well, what did I do wrong? And I say, well, the first part is that you're not shooting the basketball the same way, right? That's an issue that you have there. So consistency is huge. Film and analyze. We talked a little bit about it earlier. The best way to get better is watch film in yourself. The first time I really did that was when I was in college, and I was like, that's me playing basketball right now. I look terrible. And I always imagined myself looking a different way on the basketball court when my coach would say, hey, you know, you didn't come off this screen tight enough. You didn't get your feet set. You didn't have enough bounce into your shot. You didn't hold your follow through. Those were things that kind of went in one ear and went out the other ear sometimes. And, you know, I can truthfully admit that. But when you watch the film and then you see it in real time and you can see yourself do it, you know, your mind starts to understand that those are truthful things my coach is telling me. And those are things that I need to be aware of when I get back on the court and I start training or I'm in practices as well. So again, film and analyze is like one of the biggest things that players can do even at a super, super young age. The last two would be gain like reps and then remaining positive. I mean, gain like reps are super important. Again, if you're getting in the gym and just throwing up shots, it's not really going to do too much for you. But if you're practicing the reps that you're going to take in a game, whether that's just in general or specifically to what your coach has drawn up. You know, a lot of coaches are drive and kick. You want to work on your shooting in that. Some coaches are more so, 3-out-2 in motion action, or they're running set plays for their players to get specific shots in specific locations. Practice that stuff when you get into the gym so that, again, when you get to the game, you're going to be super confident. And then with that being said, remaining positive. I've gotten to the gym some days and I felt like I could throw a rock into the ocean. And the worst thing that you can do is get down on yourself. The game of basketball is centimeters, is inches. And so the ball's not always going to go in. You're going to have bad days. But if you remain confident and also tell yourself the next shot's going to go in, you know, you're going to be a better basketball shooter. And that's one thing I can't stress enough to players as well.
Jefferson, I have a couple of follow-up questions. Actually, I want to piggyback off your last point, staying positive. And just thinking about, you know, we've all had those days where maybe the shots aren't falling in a game and things aren't going as well for you. Do you have any advice for players or for coaches that are working with a player who just, they might be in a little bit of a cold streak. They're not making shots, during the course of the game. How can players respond to that? What can they do when things aren't going their way in that moment?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for coaches, first off, I can tell you this. If the player is missing shots, you don't need to remind them that they're missing shots. They know that 110%. Now, it's natural for a coach to get frustrated themselves, especially if they, expect a little bit more out of their player. But that positive reinforcement is going to show that player that you stand behind them. Now, there's a certain degree and level to that, but if I feel like as a player, my coach doesn't have my back and the next shot that I take, if it's a miss, I'm coming on the bench, I may not even take that shot. And if I do take that shot, I'm definitely not going to shoot it confidently. I can tell you that's truthful because I've been in that position myself. I played my senior year and was an All-American. I felt like I was the best basketball player in the world at the time. And then, shortly after that, about a year and a half later, I was playing in the D-League with the Dallas Mavericks. Was really a role player. It was kind of the first time I was in that position, and I had limited touches, and my confidence went down like crazy, and that was more so because of me. But it really affected my overall game and ability to do what I had been doing the last 10, 15 years. And so it's super important for not only coaches to continue to be positive with players, be truthful with them, but be positive. It's also very important for players to be positive with themselves. It's in human nature to get down on yourselves when you're not doing something that you know you can do. That's the most frustrating thing. But if you understand that one moment, that one shot, that one play does not define you as a player, and that if you miss that shot and make your next shot, everybody probably forgot about that last one. You're going to benefit yourself, not only physically, but mentally. And so the trick is to almost trick yourself into believing that you've made the last shot, even when you haven't. And so if you can continue to be confident with that, you have a better chance of getting off of that cold streak quicker. There's no doubt about it. I don't care who the player is in the world. Everybody's hit a slump before. Every player. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, everybody. Theirs may not be as long as some players because they figured it out, but everybody goes through it. And so the sooner you can get off, get out of that valley and remain positive, you're going to have a better chance at being consistent as a basketball player and have a lot more overall success.
Yeah, that next play mentality is so important, not in all sports really, but definitely in basketball, where you're going to probably miss more shots a lot of times than you're going to make. I mean, you think about shooting 40% from three-point range is pretty darn good, and you're missing more shots than you're making. So that next shot mentality is very, very important, and that's great advice for coaches, but also for players who really need to have that mentality as they're playing. So one of the other things you mentioned was a warm-up routine, and I was similar to that player you mentioned. I was always the guy who went in the gym, a foot away from the basket, and I'm doing my form shooting. And that just was a routine that worked for me. And, I try to look at the players I'm working with, and not my routine might not be perfect for every player. But I'm curious, what was your routine, or what's a routine that you suggest for players when they do go into the gym for either for a workout or even pregame when they're going to get up some shots? What's something that you might recommend for them?
Yeah, definitely. One of the best ways to get your confidence going is to see the basketball go in the hoop. And so if you start far away from the hoop, your odds are that you're probably going to miss the majority of your shots. That's just the numbers. And so if seeing the ball go through the hoop helps with your confidence initially, you should probably start closer to the hoop. That's with layups, that's with form shooting, moving your way out to maybe some free throws, and then getting into some long distance shooting. And so for me, I'd be lying to you if I told you right now during warm-ups before the game started that, I did that every single time. I was more of an athlete and I loved dunking the basketball and getting people excited. But as I got a little bit older, I understood the importance of getting my own mind prepared for the game of basketball and my confidence up. And so in a warm-up situation, a pregame situation, it's extremely important to imagine the things that you're going to do come game time, right? You want to practice those things, but you want to build on it, right? It's, my stepdad says this all the time, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So if I try to get the whole warm-up out in one chunk and I'm launching half-court shots, it's not going to do me any justice. It's not going to do me any good, right? I got to start close and be confident with what I'm doing. And again, continue with that consistent routine. Now, as I got older, what I'd like to do is get into that form shooting, start close, hold myself accountable to my make. So not only was I doing form shooting, I told myself I need to make 2 in a row before I move back or I move into a new location. And what that did was force me to make the shot, see the ball go through the hoop, and then build that confidence. And as I continued to go spot to spot to spot, I knew I hit the shots that I needed to in those locations. I feel confident about it. I'm good to go. I'm warmed up. Let's rock and roll and apply this to the game. And so however that works for players, whether that's warming up before a training session or a practice or even a game, you got to figure out what works for you the best way. And I think starting close to the basket, seeing the ball go in is an important step in that success.
Yeah, great advice for players there. And one other topic before we get into some individual and maybe group-based shooting drills, I did want to ask about was footwork. It came up a little bit earlier on, and I wanted to follow up and really just get your thoughts on the importance of footwork when becoming a great shooter. And then, maybe some common areas or common mistakes you see players make when it comes to footwork?
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the misconceptions I think from coaches, from trainers and players is that, one style of footwork is the only way that you can shoot the basketball. You have coaches that will argue back and forth about hopping into your shot or the 1-2 step, not understanding that you need both of those in particular moments in the game, especially if you're a good basketball player. Now, again, it's crazy how the game of basketball is. There's players that will organically, naturally, before they ever really start to get into basketball, if you tell them to shoot the basketball, they'll step either 1-2 into their shot or they'll hop into their shot. Why is that? I have no idea. It's just naturally built into them. And so some players naturally like to hop into their shot. It builds their rhythm. They like it. And some players like to 1-2. Doesn't matter what they're organic and naturally, prefer. The point is that, if they're really good at that, we need to work on the other. And so for all my players, we work on a ton of different types of footwork shooting. We work on our step-in shooting, which is basically I keep my left foot forward, I catch the basketball, and then I step into my shot, right? We then work on our rhythm shooting where my right foot is forward as a right-hander, and as that ball is in the air, I'm meeting the pass, going left, right into my shot. And so that's going to give me a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more speed, a little bit more power. We also work on turning into our shot. So, simulating action where I'm getting a down screen or a side screen and I got to catch it and turn my shoulders and turn my body. We work on flare shooting footwork. All of these types of footwork are different. And you can go 1-2 into the shot and you can go hop into the shot depending on what the situation is. And so understanding when you should not use those different types of footwork is super important. If you tell a player that this is good or this is bad or you should do this or you shouldn't do that, but you don't teach them why they shouldn't do this or do that or why they should do this and do that in certain situations, then you're not doing them any justice. So for me, we touch base on a lot of different things. But again, organically, some players are better at certain things. You don't need to focus on it too much. You go and you navigate yourself to the other pieces of their game so that they're able to shoot the basketball. And before we get off this topic, one of the things, I love shooting. One of the things that holds players back the most is their footwork, not being ready to shoot the basketball. And a lot of it is their feet. And so when you catch the basketball and your feet are like this, unless if you're the greatest shooter in the world, Steph Curry, it's very tough to get that shot off, let alone even try to do it. And so if you don't get your footwork ready, you don't catch the basketball, you don't get into your pocket, and then, everything else that follows, you might not even shoot the basketball. That's, for some of my players, just taking the shot is the biggest problem that we have, let alone make the shot. And a lot of that has to do with footwork.
So many great points of advice there for players, from the keys to shooting right down the lines of footwork. And now I'm excited to hear some of the drills that you really like to work on with players. And I'm hoping that we can talk about, kind of two sides of it, because as someone who's used a Dr. Dish, I see the benefit of the amount of reps that you can get up. And now I know players are getting them at home, the Dr. Dish home now. So there's an opportunity to get up reps on your own at home and challenge yourself. So I'm interested to hear maybe like an individual shooting workout a player can do on their own with the Dr. Dish, and then maybe one they could do on their own if they don't have a Dr. Dish. So kind of hit both areas, and I think there's probably benefits to both.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even before I kind of get into the different drills, I think a lot of the stuff that we do and a lot of the stuff that I do as a trainer is formatted for players that don't have a shooting machine. I think incorporating the shooting machine just makes it more fun, more efficient, and holds the player accountable, and then obviously gives them an opportunity to get more reps. So a lot of the stuff that we do on our shooting machines and some of our pro trainers and coaches that come in, these are drills that they do with their players without a shooting machine sometimes. And then they'll whip that sucker out and they'll do it on the machine to get faster, more reps, more players in on there as well. But with that being said, one of my favorite individual shooting drills is the 5-spot, 5-shot shooting drill. Now, you got 5 different spots, obviously, on the court, and you got 5 shots that you need to make at every single location. So for my younger players, my less skilled shooters, the goal is to make each one of those shots before you move to the next location. And those shots include a catch and shoot 2-point shot. The very next shot is a 1-dribble right-handed pull-up. The next one is a left-handed dribble pull-up jump shot. Then after that, you're going to do another catch and shoot mid-range jump shot. And then the last one is going to be catching and shooting a 3-point shot to finish that spot. Now, again, younger players, all they need to do is hit each one of those shots. So if they miss it, they keep going until they make it, and then they move on to the next, and then they repeat at each 5 spots. If you have a good player, an older player that you want to challenge, I do this a lot with my pros and my college guys, you need to make all 5 in a row. And so if you catch and shoot, and then you miss a 1-dribble pull-up, we go right back to the beginning. We're at catch and shoot. Then right-handed pull-up, left-handed pull-up, mid-range. If you miss there, we go right back to the beginning. So it's extremely fun, challenging, and then also frustrating drill for players because it holds them accountable to make essentially 5 different shots, which is difficult to do, right? Because you're not really building that rhythm. So this is more of an advanced shooting drill, but it's extremely fun to do individually. Now, one thing that I like to do this drill with the machine, because with the machine, my players can get a lot of shots. They can get a lot of shots quick. So if they're missing some, they're not running around for the basketball a ton, and they don't get their head down because they know another ball is going to fire right away, which is, super, super fun for me as well. One drill that I really like too, outside of, using the machine, is my W shooting drill. So that's a really fun conditioning drill that I say fun. I hated it when I was playing as a player because it used to get me super tired. But it's a really cool drill that I do with my players to get after and work on our conditioning. And so essentially that player is going to go in a W pattern starting near the half-court line, sideline and half-court line. They're going to sprint in for either a catch and shoot, 1-dribble pull-up, or 3-point shot. After they attempt that shot, they're going to sprint out to half-court in the middle, sprint back again for that same shot, and then sprint to the opposite sideline, half-court, around the half-court line in that W pattern, come back and shoot the shot, and then we repeat. For some of my players, I put just a time limit on there. We're going to go for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, and go hard. Some of the players, I have them rebound as well, just to get their stamina up a little bit more. But outside of that, I also add in my goals too as well. So we got to make 15 shots before we move on. And that's really tough. I had to do that as a professional player. So making shots while we're tired, working on our conditioning, it also helps with that positive mindset. Because when players get tired and they're missing shots, the first thing that goes is their mind. So, those are 2 of my more favorite individual shooting drills.
So Jefferson, now thinking about, if you have a workout, maybe you have 2 players that are working out together. Are there any drills that you would recommend for those 2 players where they can kind of interact with each other, but do it as like a partner shooting drill?
Yeah, definitely. So the first one I would do, say, is my closeout shooting. I actually did this in Luxembourg, with my teammate Raleigh Hollis Jefferson. Actually, his brother plays for the Timberwolves right now, which is really cool. But it's a really fun competitive shooting drill between 2 players. Essentially what happens in this drill is you have a player that starts with the basketball underneath the hoop. They're going to make a pass to their partner wherever on the basketball court. Now, this could be 3-point, this could be mid-range. That player, when they receive the basketball, they have a couple different options. They can shoot the basketball right away with the player running out and contesting the shot, or they can pump fake and go into a 1-dribble jump shot. Now, if the player shoots the first shot from 3-point range and they make it, they're going to get 3 points. If they pump fake and let that defender fly by and go into a 1-dribble mid-range jump shot, they're going to get 2 points. If they miss, they get 0. Now, the cool part about this drill is that the defensive player can never block the shot. All they can do is really contest the basketball. Now, this forces the offensive player to make a decision. At times, am I going to take a tough shot overhand, or am I going to take an uncontested 1-dribble pull-up? So when I do this drill with my young players, they get the basketball on the catch, and no matter what that partner defender is doing, they launch that 3 or they launch that shot. And not until they get really tired and they realize, like, if I just pump fake and do a 1-dribble, the defender can't do anything and I have a wide open jump shot, they don't do it, right? The other cool thing about this drill is you can shoot all over the basketball court. So the player that shoots the basketball, they're going to rebound their own shot. Now, wherever they receive that, or wherever they gather that rebound, they need to turn immediately and find their partner and make the pass. And so if I'm a smart basketball player on the offensive side, as soon as I see my partner shoot the basketball, wherever that ball goes, I'm going to try to go to the opposite side of the court. It makes it a lot more difficult for the defender to close out. And so it's a really good conditioning drill, really good challenging drill for each of the players. And then again, you set a goal, first to 21, first to 15, or whatever it is. Loser maybe does some sprints, or, you know, whatever the case may be after that. So that was a super fun drill. As far as, you know, another really cool shooting drill that I love is my partner shooting progression. And that's going to be our handoff progression, where one player receives the basketball from the shooting machine. Another player is going to sprint in from a different location and receive the handoff. Our first shot is going to be handoff right into our 1-2 or hop step shot. And then we reverse that player that just shot the basketball will receive the next pass from the machine. And then again, that next player comes for the handoff and they do the same. And then we get into different types of shots. We get into our sweep through, reverse, one dribble pull up. We get into our strong side, one dribble pull up. We might get into a release shot. There's so many different variations you can do with it, but it helps the players work on teamwork, handoff, setting that screen, operating off of that, and knocking down a multitude of shots. Again, you can make this a competitive drill by saying both players combined need to make X amount of shots in this amount of time, or you can do it more of a one-on-one thing where the first player that makes 10 shots wins.
Well, I have to get your expertise in one more area when it comes to shooting drills, and that's the team drills. We have a lot of coaches who watch this episode that are currently coaching a team, maybe even in season right now, or hopefully in season right now. And just thinking about something that might work if you have a group of like 5 players, and something that has worked well for you when it comes to team shooting.
Yeah, definitely. So actually in our training management system, we have a lot of different team drills that we have on there. One of my favorite ones is our spread driving kick. Now, again, if your team isn't necessarily a driving kick team, this, isn't something maybe you would focus on. We also do have different types of offensive system spread and shooting drills, but this one for me I really love. I think the game of basketball is really transitioning into positionless and players all over the place. So this gives each player an opportunity to have the basketball, drive the basketball, make a pass, and then also attempt shots as well. And so essentially in this drill, you're going to start with players spaced out into 4 different locations on the court. 2 players near half court sidelines, so extended out past the 3-point line slot area. And then you're going to have your 2 other players in the deep corners. Subs are going to start at really any line that you start with the basketball. And so essentially the first player, whether that's at the top on the left or right side, is going to dribble drive that basketball into that lane. As soon as they get into that lane, they're going to kick that basketball out back to the corner player. Corner player is going to receive that basketball. They're going to drive it back to the middle, make it skip pass opposite, and then again, we're going to drive middle for that last player to receive and catch a shot. It can be a 3-point shot, a mid-range shot. It can be also a drive into a one-dribble pull-up. That player, after they shoot, they get the rebound, and then organically we've already rotated to our next spot. Part of the reason why I love this drill is it gets everybody going, right? Everybody's moving. Some shooting drills as a team, you have players that are standing still for a very long time until it's their turn to just catch and shoot, and they move to their next spot. As a player, I absolutely hated that because I didn't really get a lot of shots up. I didn't have the basketball in my hand, and then I started to kind of cool down as the shooting drill went on. My goal when I train teams or small groups that have 3, 4, 5 players is to make sure that players are moving, right? They're moving and incorporating other skills within that shooting drill. So that's a really fun one to spread players out and then work on shooting, getting to the basket, whatever you want. Now, a really cool shooting drill with the Dr. Dish is our 3-line, you can call it a lot of different variations, but it could be a 3-line lift shooting drill that we do at a lot of clinics, and I show this one quite often. So essentially you have the machine underneath the hoop. It's going to make passes to the top of the key each time. You're going to have shooters in your right corner, your left corner. Now, every pass that comes out, players are going to go opposite ways so that we're activating both lines on both sides. So the first shooting sequence that we do is the player in the middle of the line receives the pass from the machine. They drive it into the lane. The player in the corner lifts up for either a mid-range or a three-point shot. We kick that basketball out. They shoot into the machine, rotate to the top. The passer goes to that line. The next person in line is going to do the exact same drive, kick, but to the opposite side. So I crank the machine up to tempo 1, and I got balls flying out left and right. Players attacking right, players attacking left. We're lifting up, and we're shooting shots. Now, after we hit our goal, whether that's us doing this for 5 minutes, making 20 shots, whatever that goal may be, we'll go into the next variation. That might be starting at the slots or free throw line extended and then flowing back into the corners for shots, 2-point or 3-point. You can also incorporate dribble drive handoff, so coming off the handoff for the shot. There's so many variations to this drill, and again, it's moving so fast because the machine is making the passes and rebounding that everybody's moving and they're involved. They're not standing around. I mean, literally, you can do this drill with 9, 10 players, and guys or girls won't be standing around for more than a couple seconds at a time. So I love doing that with the machine because, again, it is super efficient. I can set the different goals, and players are really working hard, and they're having fun.
Tons of great drills that you shared there, Jefferson, and I love that last one with the Dr. Dish too, because it's just rapid fire, like you said. The amount of reps you're getting at game speed, you're getting everyone involved. There's rotations going along there. Teaching players, to get into the paint, drive and kick. There's a lot of good that's coming out of that drill. So that's a really, really good one. I feel like you shared so much when it comes to player development, shooting drills. Talked about footwork. There's so many great points that we had a chance to talk about today. And I want to ask before we part ways, any advice that you would have for, coaches who might be into player development or player development specialists, skills trainers, whatever you want to call them, but they're looking to continue to improve their craft and become a better player development specialist. And is there any advice you have for those people, or maybe someone who's just getting started out in that area that wants to continue to improve? Any advice you would have for them?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first thing I would say, be persistent and keep at it. It's easy to give up if you're not getting the players to come in, or you feel like you're not having the success that you should. It's a process. It takes a little bit of time to continue to, build things, get more players in, and obviously see that success over time. It's just like being a player on the basketball court. The other thing I would say is not being afraid to try new things and to learn, right? If you're not learning, you're not studying, you're not seeing what other trainers are doing and what's working out for them, if you're not trying those things and applying it in your training sessions, then you're getting left behind. Some of the best college coaches that have been in the game for an extended period of time have been there because they've been able to adjust their coaching style, they've been able to learn, and then maximize the potential of each one of their players. And as a skills trainer, that's what our goal is to get the best out of each player that comes into the gym. Now, you're going to encounter situations that you may not be prepared for. You have to be willing to do the research, to learn, adjust, and then continue to push forward. And a lot of trainers will be afraid to give the knowledge that they've learned or they had, especially if it's something that they didn't do as a player themselves. Now, I can tell you this. I was a decent shooter, obviously decent enough to play collegiate and professional basketball, but by no means was I a great shooter. And one of the things I love teaching the most is shooting the basketball. And I feel like I could teach myself back when I was younger how to be a great basketball shooter, and I could have helped myself out in a lot of different ways. But what I've done as a skills trainer now in my late 20s and early 30s now is learn what it takes to be a great shooter, even though I wasn't a great shooter myself. And so that's a cool thing about basketball and being a skills trainer. you don't necessarily have to be that player on the basketball court. A lot of coaches think, well, I was a post player, all I'm going to do is train post players. That's not true. Basketball is basketball. You can learn it, you can study it, and then you can teach it. And then if you see your players applying it correctly, you're going to be able to build on that, build your resume, build your knowledge, build your schedule and what you do, and be more successful over time. So being persistent, be willing to learn, and then the last thing is being positive. You have players of all different levels coming in. You have some young players that are just starting basketball, and you could potentially be the first touch point that they have. And if they have a negative experience with you on that basketball court, they may never try it again. But if they absolutely love it, that might be the fuel to their fire to help them become a great basketball player. And at the end of the day, as far as Dr. Just Basketball goes and myself, that's what our goal is to help players be fired up about basketball, give them an opportunity to learn, be better, and be the best version of themselves. And if they can do that, at the end of the day, they can look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, I gave it all I had, no matter where my career ends. So those are the philosophies and the things that I stand by. Every trainer is going to be different, but if you try to incorporate some of those things, take a step back, always analyze and reevaluate yourself, you're going to have some success.
Well, that's great advice. And, being persistent and staying positive, I mean, that's great advice for coaches, regardless if it's player development or just in general. And those are values that are going to help you be successful in life and in general. And I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Dish there again at the end, because I do have word from the powers that be at Dr. Dish that coaches who watch this, leave a comment below, hit that like button, and mention the Get Better Basketball chat that they can get up to $300 off select Dr. Dish machines. They can reach out to Dr. Dish directly, and as I said, say that they did all those things. I think that's a great opportunity. I know it can be expensive, but the value of a shooting machine is well worth it, and getting $300 off is a lot of money. And I know you guys also have some plans, some payment plans, 0% financing and stuff like that for coaches that they can look into. So a lot of great opportunities out there related to Dr. Dish. And I also want to ask Jefferson, because I feel like coaches watching this are going to obviously see a lot of value in what you had to say when it comes to player development. You have so many great ideas and really love your approach to it. If they would like to reach out to you, is there a way that coaches could get in contact with you with questions about player development?
Definitely. My personal social media accounts, they're all the same. So it's at Jefferson Mason 4, the number 4. You can also always message at Dr. Dish B-Ball on all of our social channels. So that's Facebook, that's Twitter, that's Instagram, that's even TikTok now, and can always ask questions there. I work very closely with our marketing manager and everybody that handles that account. And so we answer a lot of questions that way. They can also ping me via my email. That's jeffersonm@airborneathletics.com. And then they can always call into our office numbers. If we've had a ton of coaches inquire about shooting machines, and they always say, hey, by chance, is Coach Mason in the building? Is he there? And they'll patch them through to me, and I'm more than happy to talk basketball at any moment in time. So, for me, the more I talk to other coaches, whether that's me starting off with giving them knowledge, I end up always learning more, I feel like, than I give out. So it's a good thing for me as well.
Well, I appreciate your time tonight, Jefferson. I feel like I've learned a lot from you in this process, and I know coaches will as well. So thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. Definitely appreciate you talking basketball. And, everybody out there, be sure to continue to stay in tune. You have some great stuff that you're constantly putting out. So we really appreciate you and the partnership as well.
Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Yeah.